Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. It's time for an easy, a peasy, an echoey, disorganized play. Ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. Let's hear my own computer back at me, everyone. Let's listen in. Hi. I made it go away. Oh. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Disorganized Play. I'm your host. We're here in Nerd Central. I am. Whew, I was putting together a little slideshow for you folks at home, and so I got a little bit behind on everything. Sorry to start the stream a little bit late, but here we are. There we go. Welcome. So we've got just a couple easy topics. Are they easy topics? And we'll find out as we as we delve into them. But we're going to do a review of last night's finale. Thank you so much, Thomas W. DeYoung. Thanks to everyone who watched or contributed or modded or what have you. Thank you so much. It was a big night. That was honestly it was too late of a night. That's what I have to say about that. So I am a little frustrated with myself. I left the studio last night a little frustrated with how long. No, don't fucking do this to me. Turn that off. Turn that off. Let me turn off some computer things here. Hung there for a minute. Let's not have that action happening. All right. I dropped a couple frames, but we're back. We're back in action, everyone. You're okay. We're all going to be okay. Let me get my chat screen set up here. Sorry. I had to turn off one of my computers. I'm a big deal. I have more than one computer. All right. Enter power save mode. You do that. Very good. A little scattered. It was sexy. All right. It was a late night last night, and I am not really proud of that. I wanted to wrap up an hour earlier than it did. So that's the way that is. But today we're going to cover a couple things. We're going to review the session. I did have fun. Yeah. Yes, I did have fun. I was happy with the way things came together. There were some things that I felt got short shrift. There are some things that I think went a little bit long, and there's an entire scene that I had to cut. But that's all. That's okay. Like I was happy we got to where we got, and the major things that I wanted to get out got out. And it's always a learning experience whenever you GM. I mean, I think it's difficult to walk away from the chair and go, Simath Pirnikov. Actually, I was okay with how Vanit. I think what it was Havana was pulling a lot of. She was pulling a lot of rules wiggling, and so she was kind of getting some extra attacks when she shouldn't have been getting extra attacks. Like dropping a grenade is just interacting with an object. It shouldn't have been, but I let it slide because it was the finale and we needed to keep things moving, right? So that was mostly what it was. I actually it was late at that point, and it's one of those things where, as a DM, you're trying to adjudicate, like, what's the rules, what's fair, what are you supposed to be able to do, and that was a really cool moment that prevents you. That's adjudicating those rules prevents you from seeing like this could be a really cool moment where she plants this one-shot item and like springs it up underneath him and traps him against the ceiling. Like, yeah, like she was using her imagination to do something cool in the game that, by the rules, probably shouldn't work that way. Like I was just making that stuff up of like I don't know, make an attack and roll, and he gets a saving throw, which was a fine way to adjudicate that. But yeah, it wasn't that sort of. I wasn't mad about what she did. I was trying to balance in my mind, like, okay, here's here's how a turn works, and here's within the rules what you should be able to do with this stuff. And now we're in crazy finale time where it's like, let her do the cool thing. I think that's kind of my general note um, from last night. Is a lot of it, a lot of my own GM critique from last night is let them do the cool thing. Why didn't I let them do the cool thing? So those are like the DM regrets that I have, and we'll kind of like walk through and look back at like, okay, well, where are those instances in the game? I watched most of it except for the last hour or so. This I rewatched it this morning with the comments on because I always like to see it. Um, yeah, I mean, is Havana allergic to the rules? I think it's probably more. Um, I don't know. Make this thing go away. Come on now. I just want. There we go. There we go. Everything's good. All right. Yeah, and so I had rule stuff baked in that I was going to that I was going to allow them to do, but then there was stuff that they were suggesting that I wasn't allowing them to do, and I should have just gone with it. It would have been a lot easier. I know that, my kind of take on improv is to tell players, like, no, but you can do this, no, but this might work. It doesn't work that way, but something else cool happens. But I think last night, particularly when we started falling behind and whatnot, and we're on a time constraint, we're trying to jam everything in. Like, you can yes and more than but, right? So that's something to do, right? I mean, in terms of let's just tackle a couple questions here because they're kind of coming fast here. Um, I don't know that Havana's so much allergic to rules as she gets so caught up in the imagination of her imagination of what the situation is, and wants to engage with that, right? And D&D is very much of a fine-grained microtransaction kind of system that has like, you can move, but you can only move so far. And you can do this, but you can only do this. And some of the stuff is named so ambiguously that if you don't read the explanation of what's actually covered under use an item, interact with an object, then you can go, oh, I get to use an item for free. Well, why can I pick up a flask and that's free, but I can't throw a flask for free? That's somehow an attack. There's a rules argument to be made for those things, but there's a conceptual argument that goes, you're right. So that's. I think it's it's a play style thing, and I don't necessarily see it as the fault of the player. I see it kind of just being an adjustment that you have to make between the play style and the game style, right? And those things you gotta kind of tilt them. In terms of Helter Skeletor, how do you handle rules wiggling in the future when what they want to do the same thing you fudged cause is cool? I think some of that is you have to know that it's a finale, right? And some of it is you have to go at the end of the session if that's like a big thing the next time it comes up, or preferably before the next time it comes up, go, okay, I'll let you do it now here in the game to keep things moving. Let's take a look at it either offline, away from the session, independently, or sit down together and go, all right, does this make sense? It's one of those things that I did with Garav, where it's like, your sword is heinously broken. Let's figure out a way to unbreak it that we're both happy with. And we had an exchange of like, okay, I'd like it to still do this. I don't think it should do that, da 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 da, right? So I think you work it out, you work it out with the player off in between sessions. And that way, if you do have some power creep that comes in, you can adjust that. And it's funny because I was talking about this after the session last night. I was talking about how Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is like notoriously a campaign breaking game, because either you get destroyed by mind flayers and intellect devourers somewhere in there, or your party walks out, more likely, your party walks out with power armor, 5 laser pistols, and an anti-grav belt, and then just destroys the rest of Greyhawk or whatever it is, right? So, yeah, so I want to be clear in terms of today's today's chatback session that I'd like to focus on um, what happened in the game last night and kind of take a look at some of the beats and the moments and whatnot. And then also I want to take a closer look at the props that I used because I think you all got shortchanged on your view of what elements were actually on the table. And unfortunately, we don't have a great setup for that right now. I'd like it for those big set piece battles. I'd like to be able to like get down on the table so that you can see what's going on. But uh, so we're gonna take a look at those things. I don't want to get into a big sort of like campaign review, like let's grand scope of like play styles and whatnot. I will say that like Eric Eric was the most I don't know, maybe it's because he has dyslexia or whatever that he has to memorize everything, and so he is like listening to everything and really like tuned in on what's going on, and I can almost see like his GM brain working behind the scenes. So he definitely like picks up on. He was the one where I was like, well, is there anything else that you want to do when before you leave the bioengineering chamber? And he's like, shouldn't we make a vessel for Basharla? Like he's tuned into all of that stuff more than the rest of the table is. So if he seems like he's the one who's more active or whatever, I think that's because he honestly has like the best understanding of what's intermingled in the game. Um, so what we're gonna do, just to be clear. Uh, I think on Tuesday we're going to come in and do a chat back with at least Eric and maybe Havana. I know Gaurav has a day job, so he won't be in on Tuesday. But and maybe Megan. I'm not sure what her schedule is. I know Eric's free for sure. So we'll probably do a little chat back about kind of the sweep of the campaign and this past adventure and whatnot. So we'll kind of tackle a little bit more of those grandiose kind of issues on Tuesday, just so we don't get kind of too bogged down. I'm going to show the stuff off today. I've got it here. I've taken pictures. You can actually get a really good look at it when we go into show and tell mode. I'll flip through the photos. And in fact, I'll give you a little tease right now. That's that's pretty decent. I can resize that if I need to. So yeah, we're gonna walk through the main elements, the maps, and all that kind of stuff. So that's the buzz. That's our agenda for the day. Oh, welcome. That was 10 minutes. All right. So let's kind of break things down a little bit into like. I don't want to be crude about it, but I'm going to be crude about it. Let's break down into like what I felt good about and then what I did not feel like was successful. Right. I thought honestly almost everything right up until the break was like rock solid, right? I really enjoyed, and some of this is notes for myself for planning next season, whatever that ends up being. Like, what did I enjoy, and what what do I want to minimize, right? What elements do I want to minimize? Um, so, uh, uh, I thought all the character interaction, the role playing moments between all of the different NPCs, I thought was really fun. Right, but Avril's parents, the doppelganger people, the weird purple gnomes down in the bottom of the ship. I thought they were all like those characters were fun to play. They're fun to interact with. They really kind of like bring out different dynamics between the players and whatnot. I thought those were all fairly successful, even if we were struggling at times with kind of like what's going on, what are we trying to figure out, etc. Um, but uh, but I thought that was a really rich experience, and I thought it was fun for me. I hope it was fun for the audience. I enjoyed watching it again. So I thought those NPC interactions were really kind of like the heart and soul, and really the show kind of sung at that point. So I thought that was good. Yeah, DJ Regular, about the guy who kind of came in and was like, lightsaber, I can't believe you're using a lightsaber. That's canonically in Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Like, there's a lot of stuff, obviously, that is not in Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And I can very easily understand somebody coming in and going, "What's this garbage? Where does this? What is this weird alien ship thing? And how come? What do you mean? There's these purple gnome guys, and what's the nuclear reactor? How do they go into the There's no nuclear reactor in Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. I added a ton of stuff. I really hacked this thing apart, which doesn't surprise anyone, right? But when you say doppelgangers and lightsabers, you say, yeah, oh yeah, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Did you get the laser pistol yet? Have you got the power armor? Those are things that are in there, right? So it's fine. Like, everybody is entitled to their own weird opinion. I just think, to me, giving Grayson a lightsaber was an homage to the original Expedition to the Barrier Peaks and touched on one of the classic elements of it. It was not one of my own kind of ingenious creations and inventions. It wasn't my own little remix flourishes that I like to do. So that's kind of funny. So that's fine. uh, yeah, I mean it's I don't know. I mean, is it tricky to DM a stream? Yes, it is. Am I actually the director? I don't know. I don't know. I have a lot of control, but I'm not. I'm not really the director per se. That's a complicated question. I'm not ready to get into that today. Let's go back into kind of the opening part of the session up until the break. I thought the cloning process was fun. It was too complicated. There was too many steps to explain. It took too long to get the players to really get their minds around it. And then there was a lot of stuff where it was like, well, I don't want to lose a hand. I don't want to, like, it could have been, that part of it could have been simpler. I don't know why I decided to make it so complicated. I guess I set it up that way in my mind, and that's the way it stayed. And I could have streamlined that given that we only had so much time, right? Um, but but that was it was a fun and interesting kind of like opportunity, like that whole idea. And I think giving them a list that we unlocked last week of the expanded options of stuff that they could transform themselves into, that was sort of fun. I think they got shortchanged on that. I think I should have made it simpler to re-sleeve yourself into a different body, and then let them, like, if they want to be a party of spiders or whatever, let them play around with it a little bit and figure out what it is. Instead, I made it a little too complicated, and I kind of blocked them on several things that Coffee Chipmunk, welcome back. Um, I thought it got a little too complicated, and so they didn't get to really take advantage of it, other than healing the parents and starting the process of creating the vessel for Basharla, right? Um, that's fine. That's fine. That's okay. I just wish I wouldn't have been so like, no, that doesn't quite work that way. No, you'd lose connection to all of your magic items. No, no, that it it logically made sense, but it slowed the action down, right? And that's kind of the takeaway. It's like, where are you looking at? This, does this make sense? Especially in a finale, you're not really worried about, am I going to blow the game balance, right? That's not your concern, because there's no game balance going forward. It's a one shot, right? Um, I think I just would have made it easier for them to do it, to try it, to retain their items. And I also think, like, Gaurav hit upon this idea where, like, well, maybe we could run ourselves through the recycler machine and we would be refreshed and have full hit points. And I decided no, it wasn't gonna. It could work that way, but it would have some disadvantages to it. Um, who cares? They could have gone into that fight with full hit points. It wouldn't have mattered. As it is, they went into that fight with very few hit points, which is kind of on them. But that's the way things ended up. So I think I could have just made it less like the deal breaker. If you go back and watch, the deal breaker was they'd have to reattune to all their magic items, and they didn't have time to do that. So that's the big thing, right? And why not let them try out being a badger and run themselves through the machine a few times? It does allow for a moment of whimsy. We had a lot of moments of whimsy in the first half, but oh well. So that's that's the thing. That's one of the things in terms of the first half. I think I could have streamlined the cloning process and then allowed them to take advantage of it because they didn't. There were too many disadvantages for them to run themselves through it. I think in the end they would have just reverted back to their normal bodies, whatever that is, anyhow, right? So why not let them turn themselves into a badger and then turn themselves back a into a normal halfling or whatever they were going to be, right? um, yeah. So that's the thing about it is, for some reason I thought of it as like, well, this is powerful technology. And the truth is, in D&D, you have this technology all the time where druids literally turn themselves into animals at the drop of a hat, and there's polymorph spells and all that kind of stuff, and so it shouldn't be a big deal. But in my mind, it felt like, oh, it's this big deal to be able to permanently turn yourself into uh, they never I don't think they ever caught on to what it was actually a blink dog, and I did kind of screw around with the German names for a lot of that stuff. I should share that list with you, but I don't have that. I turned that computer off to save some bandwidth here. So um, yeah, like BSB Care points out. Oh, the fighter was impaled through the chest and sent careening over the cliff and landed 60 feet below with a cracked skull and all kinds of broken bones and 5 different knives in him. Well, I guess we better call the cleric. We got to resurrect a guy. Time to get our 5,000 gold out and bring him back. The magical world, for some reason, somehow is just as potent and powerful, if not more so, as the as the. I don't know who this is. Hello. Goodbye. When the phone says spam caller, believe it. That's the deal there. The other part of it that I look back with a little bit of regret on in the first half, if you want to call it the first half, the first 2 hours before the break, is I think there was I got pretty obstinate about this is the way that you bring Basharla back. I really wanted to hit that moment of wait a minute, we've been carrying her around the entire time. And so they really had to work through a lot of different permutations, and I had to give a lot of different. Uh, I had to give a lot of different hints about guiding them back around to what they needed to do. To me, part of that was I'll share some campaign insight here. That even though I said I wasn't going to get into a bunch of like overall adventure secrets and whatnot, but I will um, give you what was going on that wasn't brought forward that maybe I should have brought forward or made more obvious. So throughout the adventure, there was this recurring instance where they just put a key card in and it would ask for a series of digits and the door would open. They seem to kind of have like security override access to just about everything. And likewise, when they went down into bioengineering, they were told that you're not supposed to be here. Oh, okay. And then the security was overridden on that, right? Um, so the deal is that Basharla, I don't know if you remember when I described the scene to Eric, I said, you know, of her murder, right, where the suit floods and she drowns. I said she's got these 2 little like tank-like things on the back of her suit, and one of them blinks kind of red and then green, and then it goes out. Well, that was her getting uploaded into the backup owl that was on her. I described it as a little tank-like thing, which was a bit of GM misdirection because I'm sure he was like, "Oh, those are air tanks." But what it was, one of those was she's got an owl attached into her emergency escape suit, and so she uploaded herself, and then through that process, somehow she was able to enter the computer system and hack the computer system, right? And so she must have had a transmitter in that particular owl that allowed her to interact with the things on her private subnet, or with the systems and whatnot. And so that's what was going on, is that she was actually the MacGuffin. They were carrying her around the whole adventure. She wanted to be found so that she could help them get her down to what she physically couldn't do was move herself, her main memory imprint. She couldn't move that to bioengineering and have a vessel generated. And now maybe there's some plot holes in there, like why couldn't she control more robots or blah blah blah. I think all that stuff could be explained through whatever excuses you want to make. But that was my idea, was like, oh, you've been carrying her the whole time. And as somebody pointed out, like, they could have they could have plugged that thing in any time. That original illustration of the owl that I showed them, like, I put on the table when I'm like, you find this thing. Oh, what's that? I don't know. Put it in the backpack and then put it away. So, no, the Silver Mist didn't get resolved. There's several kind of campaign things that end up kind of hanging out there, but it was so late that was just like, let's kind of like fast forward to the end of this thing. Basharla has a nice inspirational speech for you, which I improvise off the top of my head, and then away we go. Right? There's a bunch of different stuff that we could have spent. We could have spent 4 more sessions in Expedition of the Barrier Peaks, which means that we could have spent 6 more sessions according to Tom Time. But I could have, I suppose, at some point said, let's cut and do 1 more session, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to wrap it up last week. So, did I have it planned all along that they could have dealt with the owl and Basharla thing in the second session? Well, no, because it was one of those Schrodinger's clues that was kind of like hanging out there. Like, what is this thing? What's it for? And I thought maybe Basharla was actually down somehow, like in the bioengineering area, or she was in the, somehow her spirit was trapped in the God's fire of the engines or whatever it was, right? I wasn't sure what the answer was in terms of generate a vessel for Basharla and bring her back. I didn't have an idea for that in session 2, but I did have an idea for that in session 10, right? Like, by the time we got down the road, I was like, I know how I can resolve this thing in a way that'll make me retroactively look like a genius. So that's not my style, is to have answers and planned out, like, oh, this is how this could be done. And if they had dealt with it in session 2 or whatever, or in session 2, I don't know what would have been in there. It might have been they might have just figured out what the function was, and maybe they would have uploaded themselves into one of them, or maybe they would have copied one of their parents or something like that. They could have used it for something else, but because they had ignored it, and because there was nothing in there, I was like, this is an opportunity just waiting to be used. So that's not the way I GM, is that I drop stuff in the adventure and go, well, this is the magic MacGuffin that they're going to use to solve X, Y, or Z. A lot of times it's like, these are magic MacGuffins and their purpose becomes evident as we play. So yeah, Wraith 42, that was one of the things, is like, she drowned. I thought that was a great connection that we made. So that's that. Let's get back into the session. So we come back from the break, and they get handed off all of the toys from that chat you guys all unlocked. That was great. It was fun making that list of, here's the stuff that you can take advantage of. And the big things being, they got this kind of like little armory kit of weapons that they could use, like a lightsaber and whatnot. And then they got access to the terraforming mechs, right, which is super fun too. The hindsight there is, I think I should have designed the whole rest of the adventure to be D&D nerds in mech suits just going crazy with giant chainsaws. And we really Monday Night Dungeon fight that thing like to the max, where it's like you do gajillion points of damage with your giant sawing arm and whatnot. I think that would have been a great change of pace, and would have done a lot of like heightening of the game, and made them feel a little bit more like it's what they wanted to do. You could tell, like you could feel it in the session, right? That they wanted to stick with those mechs as long as possible, and then it just got to the point where the doors were too narrow, and it was like, well, you're going to abandon the mechs, or you're going to kind of blow the element of surprise. It's one or the other. And they wanted to keep the element of surprise, which is completely reasonable. But I think it didn't. I think it would have been more enjoyable for them to stick with the mechs and have a brawl, D&D monster versus the mechs. That's fun, right? That's a fun idea. And I didn't decide that for them, but I certainly placed disincentives in their path so that they had to get out of those things. So I think I blocked them a little bit too much on that. They did not. One other note about the mechs is it opens up that whole realm of imagination for the players, right? They just go, oh wow, I could do. Oh, this is, they really. The game shifts into a different mode when you introduce something like that, and especially because it's a one-shot finale kind of session. Like, embrace it and really, really like get into it. I think part of the reason that I fell victim to kind of like steering them back towards what their characters were in a lot of cases here, and kind of like taking things off the table, is part of my morning got eaten up with some other stuff that was not prepping the game, and so I didn't start prepping the game till 11, and I didn't have any of the maps done, right? And we'll look at the maps, but that was a 3-hour process, and the game was starting early, so I shorted myself on prep time. And I think if I had been honest with myself, I could have spent less time on all the different maps and statted up those mechs, and then had a great mech destructo combat. But I didn't have stats for the mechs, and I wasn't 100% prepared to just improvise those off the top of my head. So that's some of what was going on there yesterday. I got under the gun, I got behind the 8 ball, I cliched myself, and it was the game that impacted how the rest of the game went the rest of the evening. So they have the mechs. They did get a lot of toys, and that's cool. Like, to get all of this. Like, I don't think they even used the EMP spikes. I was going to, like, I sort of intended them that, like, you could put the EMP spikes on the end of an arrow and shoot them, but Gaurav didn't catch on to that, and it's probably sounded like, well, it's like a 10 spike. It's probably like huge. You probably couldn't shoot an arrow that way. But that's fine. I'm not unhappy with the final battle. I agree, Simath Pirnikov. I thought it was fun and epic, but I think it could have been more epic, right? It could have been more Pacific Rim and a little bit less of our heroes are hanging on by their last thread. They got a lot of toys, which was fun. I think they got too many toys. Right? Like, by the end of the night, they'd forgotten about the nuke. Like, Avril's dropping grenades. She's going through, like, literally, like, reading mage armor scrolls. Like, I'm going to use the last of my little fiddly little things that I have on my character sheets. But I'm like, I gave you a shoulder-mounted nuke, I don't know if they forgot about it, or they were like, we don't want to set this thing off inside this ship filled with God's fire, which is also reasonable, right? But when you're faced with a 60-foot tall demon creature that has eye sprouts budding all over it, maybe hit the guy with the tactical nuke, see what happens. So that was one thing that I thought could have been changed. They had a lot of toys. Maybe kind of like skinny that list down. I was trying to come up with, like, here's one thing for everybody. So he gets the lightsaber. Potentially Gaurav gets the 10 spikes. Potentially, Avril ends up with the invisibility field generator. Potentially, what was that? I don't remember what the other thing was. There's the nuke was kind of for anybody, right? So that stuff, right? Yeah, I don't know that Grayson forgot. I don't know that they forgot about that stuff, but yeah, there, you all have good questions about like, well, what's the area of effect and how dangerous is it? The thing is, they'd been hit by one already, and it only went off in like a 20-foot radius, right? It was not that huge, so maybe even like a 10-foot radius. They've taken a tactical nuke hit before, and in fact, in the session, they said so. So they knew it was potent. They also knew that it wasn't like, well, we're going to destroy the ship if we set this thing off. Now, if they pointed at the ship's reactor and shoot it at there, then of course something worse is going to happen. But I deliberately gave it to them under the implicit understanding that you've been hit with this before. Now it's your turn to use it. And because you've been hit with it before, you know a little bit about what the parameters, how dangerous it is, right? So that's that too. Um, I liked the idea that there were the robots loading the bombs into the ship. There's the power conduits, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was fun. I think it ended up creating too many enemies, right? We had the robots, we had Gingy and Baudry, we had Xanathar, we had the little beholder eyeballs. It muddied up the battlefield too much, and this party for whatever reason is pretty cautious. Like they like to go in stealthy. They like to kind of like kind of hang back and whatnot. um, it's just kind of having that many foes on the board slowed things down because they were like, well, not either they were like, let's just go right into the ship, which I was like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. That's me personally judging the player's actions rather than being the DM adjudicating. Okay, here we go. Um, or it just created a lot of like, well, all right, how do we take the most of these guys out when we don't have really an effective area of attack kind of scheme to go on here? So I think there were too many enemies. I think that encounter could have been fine tuned to be a little more dialed in, right? Um, Also, there were just like a lot of threats in play, right? There was the plague was back, the power was being drained, the transwarp field was collapsing, Xanathar was somewhere lurking about. There was a hull breach. Ostensibly, also they had to take care of Avril's parents and whatnot. But the stuff that I mentioned prior to that were all sort of ongoing threats that they needed to deal with, and it's hard to prioritize like how do we take care of this, like as we mentioned earlier, like the silver plague thing just sort of got away from everybody. Like what's that, how do we deal with that? You kind of don't. And in fact, even the sort of the AIs lurking in the background didn't could have been a factor. They weren't, I don't think, in the players' minds, but they could have been a factor in my mind anyhow. So there was a lot going on. I think I could have followed my own rules of trying to do a 3-round combat and hitting harder up front, and then uh, kind of dialing back the hit points a little bit later. I think Xanathar could have come in a little bit earlier, and I did sort of guide them to like, why don't you go through the top of the ship rather than going right into the cargo bay? And I should have been more open to that idea because then we would have gotten into that fight probably half an hour earlier or so. And they didn't really learn a lot. They did learn some things by going through the top 2 levels of the ship, but they didn't learn a lot. So, all that being said, I thought it was a fitting and a successful conclusion to the campaign. I was largely happy with what played out and how it all played out. Um, I think one piece of advice is when you're in a session where you've been playing for almost a year or whatever with all these characters. Um, I think you have to reckon with the fact that the players are going to reflect on and sort of relitigate the bits and the pieces of, well, the bits that their characters do, but also relitigate sort of like some of their old events from previous parts of the campaign and kind of revisit those things. And that's okay, but it takes up time in the game, right? So there were moments where I'm like, well, you guys are going around and around about this, but you're going around and around at this for out of character development reasons and not because you're trying to forward the plot. And it is the last session, so I've got to let you do that a little bit. But at some point, you guys need to go get in this fight, right? Like, that's that's what the session is set up to do, is get into get into the heart of the conflict. So, but that's just something that occurred to me is like you when you're this far, if it was truly a one shot, they're not going to spend time kind of like they might spend time creating character bits and history between the various PCs, but they're mostly going to kind of like let's get into the plot. How do we what's the next thing for us to do? Whereas in a campaign like this, they're going to take moments to revisit bits of character development that have come up in previous sessions and kind of like give that sort of like a little, exit grace note kind of thing. And I didn't necessarily reckon with that happening. I didn't think about that. It came up. We just talked about it. All right, so that's a good 40 minutes of me talking about how I thought things went. I don't mean to sound too down on myself. I'm a little tired, and I was a little frustrated last night when it went late. But I do think it was a successful session, and I hope it was entertaining to watch. And I don't think there was dead time in the 5.5 hours that we played, but I had a personal goal for myself to like let's get this thing wrapped at 11, maybe 11:30 at the latest, and going an hour later than that was a frustrating experience for me. I feel like I let myself down and kind of missed the mark when I could have sped things along a little bit. There's some things that you can't speed along. You gotta let the players have their moment to kind of breathe and do their bits and whatnot. But you can catch up on the VOD if you want me to tell you what happened. Well, we'll walk through what went into the into the end scenario here, right? Let's get into that next. I know it goes late. I just feel bad for the players whenever it goes past 11:30. That's tough, right? So it is the way it happened. We will learn and go forward. I think my biggest takeaway from this whole thing is really when you have 3 hours, you basically only have time for 3 distinct scenes, right? For 3 things to happen, 3 plot points to happen, or 3 issues to get addressed. That's it. And anything more than that, you can plan one thing more, but have that thing be optional. And I think it's also easy in your home game to go, oh, what time are we playing D&D? Oh, we start at 2:00. Well, you don't often set an end time to that, right? Like we've gotten to a thing in my home game where it's like, let's set an end time to 6:00. Okay, great. We'll wrap this thing at 7. Well, let's pick it up next session. But so often, certainly so many times in my career, when we got together, we would say what time we were getting together, and then we would never really give a time to wrap. We would just sort of wrap when it felt right. And I think it's more important to kind of pull. I think it's important to try to schedule around like let's try to deal with more of a fixed block of time. I know they all go late, and I shouldn't beat myself up about it, but I had really set that as a goal for myself, and I walked out going, God, there must have been a way that I could have cut an hour out of that, and those are my thoughts on how that could have happened. It's all fine. It's all fine. But that's my big takeaway is like plan for less. Plan for less. I have so many elements going into that thing, so many things that I wanted to do, and entire sections of stuff that got cut. As it was, I still had too much material. Let's go take a look at that material. Having an end time is a great way to try to work on your pacing, right? Try and look for opportunities to edit. It's a learning opportunity, everyone. I don't mean that sarcastically. It honestly is a learning opportunity. That's what this whole show is about. I'm not perfect. All right, so let's take a look at the things that went into the final combat. Here's a little teaser. Welcome to Show and Tell time. We're going to talk about some of the props and whatnot that went into our game of Expedition of the Barrier Peaks last night. So, let's start with the basics, shall we? Let's get rid of this, and let's just talk about the maps that I used. Don't be like that. Be like that. There we go. All right. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can make this any bigger. Kinda. All right. So this was the top level. If you recall the other maps that I've used a lot of stuff from Future Armada, right? That was I bought one of their big like space station maps. I don't remember which one it was. Is the Argos 3, right? That's what I used to create a lot of the battle maps that we've seen previously. And I was looking for something similar, but I wanted to have. I was just looking for a location for the final fight. And really, what I wanted, I kind of got fixated on this idea of they walk across the hull of the ship. And that was going to be the big finale. Was this like, okay, we've got a spacewalk across the ship, and you could get blown into transwarp space at any time and lost to the right? And I think that had a lot of potential. What it does not have is a lot of third-party support, right? So I was looking for battle map terrain of the surface of a interstellar starship, and it doesn't exist. Like, not on Drive-Thru RPG. I couldn't find it. It was not available, and I unfortunately spent several hours at least trying to find something where I could, again, like I had done before, like lay out those boards and kind of roll one after the other, and you guys can go the safe route straight ahead, or there's an armory cache that's attached to the hull over here, but it's got all these security turrets around it or whatever, right? I thought there were a ton of really good ideas around the idea of we're going to do a spacewalk across the hull of the ship, and then probably end up in the antenna array having a battle with Xanathar in the antenna array where all this energy was being focused and whatnot or whatever, right? Couldn't find the map for it. So I started looking around for some alternative, and I found I kept looking at the 0 Hour stuff because it's so well done, and I ended up 0 Hour did it's a three ship map pack for this alien race called the Valar, which is V''LAR. And these ships are these maps are kit bashed from the maps for those ships. They're not exact one for one. One of my limitations here is that I wanted all this stuff to fit on a single piece of 20 by 30 foam core, right? That was it, right? And therefore, I had to shrink some of the maps down and kind of edit out rooms and whatnot. And then also I wanted to change some of the features a little bit so that it wasn't quite exactly what it was. So I did spend a little bit of time hacking these things. So you won't be able to put this map together the way it is right out of the box, but this is one of the maps that I used. This is the top floor of the ship, where they came in the, I don't know, if you look in the center right section at the top, that's where they came in, and then they went down that shaft in the middle. But in the back of the ship and in just in the other room are these giant weird kind of honeycomb things, and that's the storage for the God's Fire. Okay, well, we're fueling the ship up, filling it with God's Fire. Okay, that's not good. That's what we learned on that level of the map. Yeah, and this is where I got into my little bind of like, well, can we even fit our maps It's tempting when the players suggest to themselves that they can't fit through here. Oh, I don't think we can fit through those doors, can we? No, no, you can't. Yeah, I didn't have to play that card. Here's map 2. This is the second level. I mean, so the thing is, each of these are actually distinct ships that I have essentially kind of divided into decks, right? So this is a different ship, and this has what I like about this is it's got all these bombs on it, right? It's got kind of the cool, weird pilots section to it up front too. But I really love that there is clearly this sort of armament bay that's loaded with bombs. It looks super badass and dangerous, and that was level 2. I think also it was an opportunity like, well, you could take one of those bombs and drop it down into the deck below. You know, they had the invisibility shield and whatnot. They could have done something interesting with that. That was sort of what I was hoping for with this deck. I think if I'd had a little more time to prepare, I might have been able to create more discoverables and opportunities around each of the distinct areas within each deck. As it was, I really had sort of like one thing that you could discover on the ship, right, on each deck, and that felt that was kind of like me, just sort of like let's cut, get into the big fight, let's cut and get to the big fight. If you think these things are impressive in black and white, the maps are actually in full color, and I wish that in retrospect, I kind of wish that I'd sent them off to Staples or whatever and had a bunch of them printed in full color because I think it would have really looked great on the paper. But I did them here at home. The advantage to me doing them at home is I could print one particular page that seemed to really fit into a lot of different things over and over and over again and cut features out of it and tape them on. So there are cases where I've taped like one of those like honeycomb things on top of a stairwell or whatnot, and changed um, what some of the terrain is like, some of the features of the ship inside, and I changed a lot of the geography of these ships. So, like I said, they're not going to be exactly like what they look like if you go and buy that PDF. But if you go and drive through and you search Valar or Zero Hour, you'll find this thing. It's one of the few alien ships that they've done. Most of their stuff is kind of standard sci-fi transports and whatnot. Their stuff is a little pricey. I will say in comparison to most PDFs, their stuff is priced more in the $5 to $9 range as opposed to the $1 to $4 range. I don't think that's unreasonable considering like I'm gonna get a lot of use out of this. But why am I pausing on that? I think that's fine. That's fine. I'm just telling you, if you are going in and going like, oh, this would be a great 99-cent map, you're not. They put more work into it, and pay them for it is what I would say to you. The other thing I will mention is there is a company called Hero Maps, and I've been a big fan of theirs. Um, and they create maps for what game is it? I don't remember. It's one of the tabletop wargaming systems that's pretty popular, and I don't remember which one it is. But anyway, their maps are all 20 by 30, but they they I think they print in A4 or something like that, and so they're not very. I remember having problems where it's like I'm doing a lot of cutting and pasting. I end up doing a lot of cutting pasting with this too. So 2-minute maps. I'll have to take a look at that. But that's another one is hero maps. I've used those before, and in hindsight, I might have been able to use that for the hull of the ship, but that by the time I was making this decision, I was really getting under the gun. So then the third map and the final battle arena here is the giant cargo bay, right? And what I like about this is this really gives you that alien feel of it's got this weird non-standard. I think it's heroic maps, 2 words. Uh, I believe that's what it is. I don't have a browser window really pulled up here. Let me see if I can. Let's see if I can get drive through. No, not Google Drive. Let's go to through RPG. Yeah. Come on, RPG. Why are you being like this? Because I don't use my laptop for everything. Surprisingly enough, I have 2 computers. So, Hero, first of all, let me find you all a link while we're at it here, huh? No, yeah. All right. Yeah, this map pack was $6. So that's the Valar map pack. And I'm just going to give you a link, the publisher link to Heroic Maps. Heroic Maps. They do a ton of different styles and whatnot, so they're pretty cool. BSB Care, I'm judging you. All right. All right. So those are the 2 groups that I've mentioned. Now, I love this because it has the alien feel to it, right? It does not feel like it's settle down, phone. It feels like an alien ship, and I wanted to give the idea that this was a ship. You know, this is essentially, I hate to say it, this is a spell jamming ship, right? So, you know, this is Xanathar's ship. You know, Gingy was the pilot. I don't know that that really necessarily came forward as clearly as it could have, but that's the deal. Gingy was the pilot of the ship, and Xanathar. Again, I don't want to get into too many campaign backstory issues here, but enough time had passed that Xanathar had this ship built explicitly to go to the Valerius and steal the God's Fire himself. So that's what happened here. So yeah, I wanted this something to look very alien, and the area on the left is sort of grafted on from a different map, but that's the biologic regeneration chamber. That's the place where Xanathar had himself reborn, reformed into the gross, weird, demonic form that he took on. I haven't made a final judgment on how much time has passed. That's one of the things. I mean, yeah, I saw that Wraith 42 that you talked about. Maybe it was a Mind Flayer Nautiloid. It'd have been great to have some Mind Flayers on board here, but that's like it's so far off the beaten path. Like if Xanathar's working with Mind Flayers, that would be awesome. Hey, I hitched a ride with these Mind Flayers. There was something set up in the backstory here that I didn't incorporate last night, but I had on my notes sheet that Xanathar had a ring of wishes that he decided to use. So he got on the ship and saw what was going on and saw all this machinery, and he burns a wish that says, I want to know how all of this stuff works. And then he burned a wish to, I want to take control of all of the machinery here. So that's some of the kind of like how all of this stuff got fast forward and how the robots got control and whatnot, right? But this is his ship, and I thought the reason I used this map was it's got the cargo bays, it's got a lot of open space so that you can have a big fight, but it's still got interesting terrain features where you can have like little beholders burst out of the crates and whatnot. You can have different particular items that could explode on if they take too much damage or whatever. It has it's got an open floor plan, so there's enough room for battle, but it has enough details and interesting features to make it an interesting and fantastic location, right? They made decent use of the terrain, mostly because Avril in the final round used her Quell's Feather token, which creates a tree, and she used it to she got underneath Xanathar and pinned him to the ceiling with it. So yes, they didn't make great use of the terrain, but that's fine. They didn't. The nice thing about this map is you can either let the players ignore the terrain, which I largely did, or you can kind of hem them in with it if you choose to do so, and they're into using like, oh, I'm going to hide behind this crate, I'm going to hide behind this, pop around this corner, that sort of stuff. That wasn't the style that they wanted to play, so we just sort of let it go last night. So, Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at Xanathar Reborn, right? Um, so that's the full figure. It's big. In fact, I will show you how big it is. This is my face. This is how big it is. It's enormous. Unfortunately, it broke off. There's a standing plate with a pin in it, and that was designed to hold it up so that it would stay standing. And in transport, the pin broke off in his foot, and I ended up not being able to use the plate. This is from a anime called Devilman. I don't really have any interest in watching it because basically every other figure other than this devil guy figure is basically boob lady. So whatever. I mean, anime gonna anime. I will just caution you if you decide to go looking for this stuff. But we went to an anime shop. I was looking for something unique and interesting to do with Xanathar. I didn't want to just fight a beholder because I thought that was sort of boring, right? And I was also playing with the idea like, okay, what's Xanathar's number one concern? He's going to die. He wants to become younger, immortal, whatever it is, right? Um, and I want to convey to the party because they know about the time dilation that time has passed. Let me bring you into a close up to this thing because the top figure like this gives you a pretty good idea. There's not really much on the back. There's a single eyeball on the back as well. Yeah. There's not much on the back, but let's take a closer look at this thing. So that's the close up, and then it in the chest there's also an eyeball, and this chest is articulated so that it can actually bite, right? So what I wanted to do was have like a battle mech beholder where he was inside some sort of battle suit and had like glass, like he's floating inside this glass helmet and it has a battle suit with it and whatnot. I thought that sounded cool, but I couldn't find that thing and I couldn't make it. Didn't have time to make it and whatnot, right? Um, then I saw this thing and it was on sale at the toy shop and it was normally $40 and it was marked down to 16 and I was like, there's no way I'll find anything more perfect. So that's really where that, you know, it was an inspired moment. You look on Amazon. It's like how long is it going to take to deliver? How big is the thing? How much am I going to pay? Da 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 da. And I didn't want to spend more than $20 on this boss monster thing. Now I think I will probably use this for other stuff. It is fairly cool. Um, so it's a solid investment, but I was especially happy that it was only $16. So that's where Xanathar Reborn came from, and it's one of those things where you put this thing on the table and they go, oh yeah, that's a demon beholder. That's a demon beholder. Perfect. Yeah. Oh boy, it's time to oh, I forgot to dungeon you guys. Oh well. So that's that. Let's take a look at some of the other. Let's take a look at. We've seen the robots before, but let's have a close-up picture of those robots. So that happened. So these are Therians. Where's my little thing of a little box of goodies? We're gonna go a little bit later since I started a little bit later. I don't want to go too long. I've got voiceover class tonight, everybody. So these are from the old AT-43 war game that was originally done by. It starts with Rackham. Rackham Fantasy had a great line of miniatures, and actually they did these guys in metal at one point, which was amazing. And then they got bought out by Fantasy Flight, and Fantasy Flight took over the game, but then made everything in plastic. And the plastic, I like plastic for how light it is, but this plastic is a little brittle, and I'm not particularly happy with it. But I love these sculpts. I love, love, love them, and I've got a bag of them that they make great sort of Borg construct kind of creatures like construct warrior, clockwork warrior guys, and they've got I've got I think 8 different poses or something like that. I'm not sure, but those are pretty great. Those are pretty. I love those things as kind of mindless shock troops type of situation. So I'm pretty happy with those. I always look forward to a chance to use them. I don't want to overuse them, but they're really great. They're, they're the kind of thing that I think finds its way into Dungeons and Dragons a lot, but it finds its way through a steampunk kind of mentality, and I like the sci-fi version more than the steampunk mentality. Maybe it's just because I love the Borg from Star Trek so much, but these are the figures that I use, and they're pretty great. Yeah, I, I'm I'm generally happy with Fantasy Flight, but I will caution you if you go back and buy the stuff from the AT-43 or some of those early Rackham lines, the plastic they use is just like if you drop it, it could shatter the figure, and then you're like, ugh. A little mad, especially because the game's now out of print. So the only way that you can get this stuff is either eBay or Miniature Market still has some back stock, but the selection is pretty thin at this point. I got a lot of this stuff on sale, um, in their every Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Black Friday kind of stuff, when they do their big massive sale at Miniature Market. All right, so but those are my robot guys. I like them. I think they look they're very evocative. I think. All right, some other things that we saw on the board last night, just because I bought these just because I'm going to use them personally, but are these explosion sculpts, right? So these are little dynamic fixed explosions, right? Simath Prinikov, thanks so much for joining us, and Schlaf schön. So these are translucent and molded. I'm not sure what the material is exactly, but the nice thing about them is they have this you can't see, right? Um, they have little holes on the bottom here so that you can actually mount them. You can mount them onto those little. I don't know if you've ever gotten into like the Figuarts figures like Iron Man and whatnot. Um, I don't have any Figuarts ones. I have some Hot Toys, whatnot. Um, Actually, I have one thing I'll show you. The one thing. So obviously, I'm an Iron Man guy, right? And this is a Figma Iron Man figure. But the cool thing about this, am I going to do this? I'm going to do this. Is you can take one of these stands and it will slot into I don't know that I haven't ever done this before, so maybe you need a different standee in order to do it. No. Will this do it? Yeah. So there's also so here's the disadvantage to these things. I'll show you that right away. Is that the back of them, they're not complete 360s, right? So there's the front, and then from the other angle they just look like molded plastic, right? So keep that in mind, right? But you can take this stand and then pose the fireball. And the great thing about it is you can pose it, essentially sort of pose and stack these things. So the idea being that you put your figure in front of this thing and then there's this badass explosion happening behind it, right? That's the idea. They were $20. Turns out that's, they're 25, 26 on eBay. And I have some figures that I want to display them with. So I think they look really cool from one particular angle on the battle map, right? So if you have stuff that's going to explode, I'm like, I don't know, things may explode. I want to put these things on the battlefield. That's what I ended up deciding to do, deciding to use. And I wasn't unhappy to have them on there, but it is a little weird to have a feature that has one distinct hero angle and then one distinctly non-hero angle, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so something to keep in mind. All right. All right, Tony, you can live back here for a little while. Oh no, Tony, what happened? Good enough. Good enough for now. All right. So those are those. Those are Figuarts. Hey, thanks for joining me, Avi. Appreciate it. So we only have a couple more elements to cover here, actually. So those are the explosions. These are the battle mechs. Guess what? Yeah, these are interesting fire elementals or whatever. I think there's a lot of different ways you could use this thing. It's especially great for if there were mines on the battlefield or something like that. They're great. The battle mechs are honestly from the Mech Warrior game, right? The HeroClix BattleTech game. And these are old. I bought these as used figures. I didn't buy any booster boxes or whatnot. I just went to the game store and they, said, do you have old mechs? And I looked for the ones that were like $1 or $2, right? I don't care about their rarity. I don't care what their powers are. I care what the pose is, what they look like, and what their coloration is, what weapons they have on them, and I care that they're not more than $2 or $3 a piece, right? So. Yeah, I wish I could have done the map in full color, but I bought the PDF at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So the maps are super fun, right? Those are pretty cool. The mechs are pretty. I thought it was a fun element. I've used it before in other games, and just go to your game store and see if they have a seconds box. Like do you sell old battle mech guys? Or find them, I'm sure Miniature Market has them. I'm sure that you can go on eBay or whatever and see what the things are and pay a couple bucks. And they make another great kind of like shake 'em up element to put on the battlefield. Like if I had used these as antagonists, wow, would the players have been crapping their pants, right? Like, oh, what, these things come out? Yeah. And then you fight them? Yeah, that's right. So you don't need a lot. I've got a bag of, I don't know, 8, something like that. I think the final element that came out on the board, which didn't get enough use, but did make an appearance, are these little beholder eyeballs. Now, this is a kit bash thing that I did. I actually started this project over the weekend, and then I didn't quite bring it to fruition the way that I wanted to, but that's okay. So these are little beholder eyeballs, right? That's the whole idea, is that they're little floating beholder eyeballs. And the nice thing is, if you really want to, you can fit more than one in a stand and kind of make like a little trio of these things. But essentially, what I did was I went to Michael's. Always a dangerous thing. Randall Walker, forever may you rest in peace. We made a little trip to Michael's for you. And these are rock candy wooden rods, the dipping rods, right? So I don't think I have any that aren't painted, but this is for rock candy. You dip and make rock candy off of it, right? I found this in the baking aisle, one of the baking aisles. And all I did was first I painted the whole thing white, and then I painted everything else around the eyeball, right? So actually, you can see on the screen, right? So if you paint the whole thing white, so rather than painting the whole thing blue and then painting white on top of it, you paint the whole thing white and then you paint the skin around it. And then I just took a Sharpie, a red Sharpie, and put a dot on the eyes. And that took literally minutes, right? And then I have a bunch of these little standy things, which you can see in the photo. And all that you do there is you pry it apart a little bit. And so you pry it apart a little bit, then you slide it into the stand and orient it in whatever way that you want. So if you want to do it sideways or whatever, it doesn't matter. But the idea is that you can make a swarm of them like this stuff. And I had 25 of them that I was going to have this whole swarm of little beholderkin guys come out and attack them. But when we were running short on time, and there were a number of them that made an appearance, but uh, it was just enough of them to make an appearance. I didn't want too many, right? Because that's it was getting too late to do that. So I don't know that I've seen donut lollipops. What are the little I bought them a long time ago, and I got a really good screaming deal on them. And I think there's a place. Let me do a quick Yahoo search here with BSB Care. Uh, yeah, so this will work. Let me just get it to come up here. Here's what are we looking for? No, 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 no. This is what we're looking for. Let's see. Their website is not great. So what you can do is get these card stands. There's a place called 99centgameparts.com, and you can, let me drop a link here. And you can get those. So you can get those, and I use them for a bunch of different things, right? I think they're really handy. You especially use them for if you have the Pathfinder pawns, or you have any pawns. Like I backed the Tome of Beasts, and I really love it, right? Well, if I recall correctly, I got the pawns for the Tome of Beasts, and they're never going to make miniatures of those monsters. I wish they would. There's some really great monsters in there. But you can also just make your own little paper miniatures using art and whatnot, um, and print them off on cardstock or whatever, right? So those little card stands are terrific for just bringing a dash of customization to your table, but it's very transportable, and it has a million and one uses, and it's light, low footprint, very versatile. You can just put a number in there and go, okay, that's goblin number one, goblin number two, whatever. If you want to do something that basic. But I bought a bag of 50 of them for like $3. I don't know, 10 years ago, or probably longer than that. And it's been a great investment. I use them when I have something special happening on the battle. You can also use them to like create terrain. You could use them to like delineate walls and doors and all that kind of stuff if you really wanted to. And the only thing is they are a little triangle, so they kind of take up that whole square, right? You can't truly make. You gotta be careful. But yes, they make a great proxy fig. So there. I have thought about getting a 3D printer to make figurines, and I really do recommend the stuff that Fat Dragon puts out. Tom Tullis puts a lot of thought into those things, and the detail is amazing, and he's super helpful if you're having problems printing stuff off. They have a Facebook group, and they give all kinds of advice, and he'll give you advice on like, oh, okay, well, you're running the different kind of plastic, or maybe your nozzle's too hot, or da 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 da. Like he's got the expertise to not just put the model files together, but actually help you get achievable results. I don't have the space in my apartment to dedicate to a, a thing that's going to burn plastic for 7 hours overnight or whatever. I can't really pull that off. If I had a garage or a basement work area that was dedicated to my stuff, I would do that. But yeah, because I think it's once you start looking at what the plastic costs, once you get over the initial investment of the machine, what the plastic costs and what the model files look like and what you can do with the model files, was an amazing, tremendous benefit. I think the downside to it is I probably would have been tempted to like quick kit bash a thing in some sort of model program and then print it off and start the thing at 10 in the morning and hope that it would be done by 5 o'clock at night. So I recommend looking into it, and Fat Dragon has a terrific line of terrain, and they also have miniatures and whatnot. So I really, you know, I've looked at some of the Camino options, but I'm not. It the problem with the Camino options is usually you need to pay like a monthly club fee or something like that, and that's sort of like the difference between buying your car and leasing your car. If you're okay paying X amount of bucks every month, that's fine. Go for it, live your life. But I'm not sure I'm ready to make a monthly investment in a 3D printer that I only get so much time on and whatnot. So I don't know. I've thought about it. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Maybe someday if we own a house, that will come back around. But right now, I'm just happy to have my wall of gaming stuff behind me in a cluttered but accessible format, rather than just being stacked up in boxes, which it oftentimes was. So thanks for the cheer, Genius Mutates. Very much appreciated. All right, so that brings us around to that's it for the stream today. That was our little walkthrough of the various props. I had more stuff that I didn't use, but that's okay. That was just a nice look at what was on the table. It was a lot of it was fun. It's fun to put this stuff on the table and have that moment where the pillars are like, what is happening? What is that thing? That's what comes out? Yeah. So that's it does make for a great moment of drama, even if it sometimes causes me a lot of headaches in my prep and whatnot. So let's take a quick look at the calendar and see what's on deck for the rest of the week. Tonight, of course, we are dark. Tomorrow night is another chat back show with our friends at Wildcards. You can sit around the campfire and do a Q&A and chat with the cast about this most recent season that concluded 2 weeks ago. And if you have questions about what happened, what was planned, what came up in the moment, blah blah blah, please check it out tomorrow night at 8. Saturday, you can catch up maybe on the 5.5-hour game that we completed here last night for our Expedition of the Barrier Peaks finale. Or there's other shows you can check. Legacy City of Mist is one of our brand new shows that just came around, so you can check that out. The last VHS store just did episode 2. You could get caught up on that with their finale, which will be on Tuesday. And then on Sunday, you can catch Tempting Fate. It's the third part of our Toy Story trilogy, Toy Story 3, which is a hack of Lasers and Feelings, and Amy Vorpahl, Kelly Nugent, and Gina DeVivo will be back with GM Rick Budd, and I'm not sure, I believe we're following Sam DeLev's character, right? So Sam DeLev will be there too. So that's our lineup for the week. Thank you so much for everyone joining me and listening to my self-reflective musings on my skills. Did I achieve level 4 DMdom? We may never know. As I said, we're planning to have a chat back show on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. That will probably be that will be the beginning of a break for Disorganized Play until we come back and start the next season of the Iron Keep Chronicles, right? So I will be taking a brief hiatus, both from Disorganized Play and from our regular Wednesday show, until we figure out exactly what the calendar is, and I have to figure out what I want to run, and we have to figure out what the cast is. Those are all big decisions, and I don't really have the bandwidth to just do an open-ended, like, let's blue sky about jamming kind of stuff. There's other places you can go for that and whatnot, and I'd rather do something that's a little more structured and tied to what's going on our channel. So FYI, we're going to get together again on Tuesday and try to do kind of like a campaign in review, adventure in review kind of session, at least with me and Dom and Eric. Hopefully Havana and maybe Megan can join us. That would be great if we could get them in the studio. But we'll see who turns up. So next Tuesday at 2 is the next session of Disorganized Play. I want to thank Farquaad and all the rest of our mods and regulars who do so much to help keep the channel safe, friendly, clean, and accessible. I want to thank everybody who came in and joined today, and everyone who chimed in with some bits and whatnot. Your advice and reflections and insight are always appreciated, and thanks to everybody who shares the stream on social and whatnot. Your word of mouth helps us grow the channel. And we've got exciting things going on, I think. So I hope you will spread the word. It's a great time to say, well, this story arc is complete. If it drives you nuts to listen to something that's ongoing, you can go back and listen to the whole thing now. So that's where we're at. Thanks so much for joining us, and until next time, let's dungeon! Oh man, I am so good at clicking. Well, I'm probably not. I mean, Dom does a good job at clicking too, but we know who the level 4 clickmaster is. Now, don't we?